If you know me, you know I'm a big VR enthusiast. In August of 2019, I purchased the Valve Index as I wanted the best and most comfortable VR experience available. This thing was $1,000 US, so I had high expectations for it. And yeah, while it's working as intended, it works amazingly. You have 144 frames per second and 1440p per eye. It's extremely smooth. The controllers also have finger tracking and hold on to your hand so you can let go of things physically. I use my Index a lot, and I love it, but I've come to dread using it out of fear of destroying it. My Index has continuously broken down just from me using it as intended. Back when I got my Index, things were pretty smooth. It was great until about the beginning of 2020. That's when I started getting really good at Beat Saber, and started going pretty hard on my controllers. The amount I was swinging significantly wore down the springs that are supposed to create friction to keep the straps tight around your hand. The looser they got, the more I tightened, which loosened it more. Eventually it was at a point where I couldn't rely on the controllers to hold on my hands anymore. I had my first RMA, and for the most part, the RMA process is perfect. Valve gets back within a few days, and you just send your controller off, and a fresh new one would arrive in a week or so without any cost. Today they'll send you a replacement before you even have to send yours, so you don't have to spend much time without a working Index. This wasn't available until about summer 2020-ish though. I've also had issues with my left speaker, where the audio would randomly cut out. I've heard this is a common issue, and the fix is just to clean up the contacts and tighten the speaker a bit. I had some little blips now and then, but for the most part it works okay. Right around the time I got my first pair of controllers back, this happened. The base station died. I had just gone a week without playing VR, so I was eager to get back in, so this was super bad timing. Luckily, Beat Saber was facing mostly just one direction, so I was able to make do with the one base station until the broken one was replaced. Until the next day. Pretty much what happened is the base stations were left on constantly. I wasn't aware this was bad to do. Basically, the base stations tore through their entire lifespan in 6 months since I was keeping them on constantly. This is an option that can be changed by going into Devices, then Base Station Settings. You want to enable Power Management and set the mode to Sleep. For some reason, this isn't the default setting, which I think is pretty silly. Valve argues that the wearing from starting up and stopping the motors inside of the base stations damage them more than keeping them on. But I've heard that as long as you're not turning them on and off all day, initially turning them on and off is nothing compared to the wear of having them spin constantly. You could argue that I just got unlucky, but they literally broke within 24 hours of each other. I think that proves you shouldn't keep them on. By the way, in total, guess how many controllers I had to replace? Maybe another 2? Maybe 5 in total? I had to replace 7 controllers. 3 pairs, and 1 right controller. The straps were having the spring issue, snapping, and at one point the spring even exploded and launched out of the controller. Now I just play without the straps. I've dreaded games that I have to use the straps for, because even since my new controllers, where I have been extremely careful not to touch the straps, they still just don't feel tight enough by default. I make it sorta loose, and it just gets looser, every time. I just make it tighter to reduce the time between tightening. Telling me to make it sort of loose to the point where it doesn't feel natural is not what I want. It's like putting half of a sock on. At this point, my controllers are about 6 months old, and the straps work okay, but I still hate them. Also, my left controller has a hole in it. One day, a crack just showed up. I don't think it was from a drop. The place that it formed isn't really a place that can be hit when dropped. I think my sweat just kind of melted it. The crack just spread more and more until one day it opened. Now there's just a hole there. I have a piece of tape to cover it because I literally just do not care. Now we need to get into the big issues. That will likely happen to everyone. Drift. It's a problem with a lot of controllers these days. Even all of my Switch Joy-Cons have drift. My left controller started getting a little bit of drift recently, but it actually has seemed to stop happening. I've heard drift is pretty much inevitable for joysticks and gets worse the smaller they are. This is just a general issue that needs to be figured out. It's pretty much going to happen to everyone, and only gets worse. I've heard it's partially caused by clicking down on the joysticks, but ironically it happened on the joystick I never clicked down on. I know Valve can't defy physics, but this is a big issue and there's currently no solution, outside of maybe repairing it yourself by buying a joystick replacement. Outside of drift issues, there's one final issue that will essentially make indexes self-destruct in about a year. Thrillseeker did a video covering this issue and how it basically renders your index useless. Essentially what happens is, some pixels will randomly fire off on your display. Initially it's not noticeable unless you're staring into complete darkness. But after a while I started noticing it in just generally dark areas, and it was a distraction and constant reminder that the index is just slowly breaking. You will then hear audio popping every now and then, until eventually the cord is toast. Once I got to the audio popping stage, I just replaced my cord because I didn't feel like damaging something. According to the video Thrill made, this issue is probably coming from the positioning of the index's cord. The cord kind of gets squished and causes the fibers internally to snap, which eventually leads to total failure. You can buy a new cord, but they're not cheap. You'll be set back about $130 pretty much every year or so. If you have any other issues with the index, good luck. Steam support told me that since I'm outside of the warranty window, I'm on my own. This is really disappointing, and a total failure for the index in my book. If you own an index and haven't experienced these issues yet, ask yourself how much you really use it. I have probably about 1,000 or so hours in Steam VR. The more people use the index, the more people will realize they're completely screwed. I understand Valve isn't able to waste money on everyone for the rest of the time they have their index, but these issues should not be happening in the first place. It sucks, because there's no other good options. If you're like me and prioritize high frame rates, ease of use, good tracking and reliability, there's nothing for you out there. The index checks every box except for reliability in my opinion. Right now, the index is not worth getting. There's not really a happy ending for this video. I don't really know what to do now. If you're in the VR community, or own an index, or both, please share this video with everyone you can. Make some noise. Maybe something good will come out of it. I don't really know what we can do to make a change, but maybe we can reach out to someone who does. That's about it for me. See ya.